So hi everybody, nice to be with you today. Lots of familiar names on the call, and some of you who may not have previously heard me speak or don't know much about BTO. So I'm going to start before I get into the nesting side of things, just with a tiny brief introduction. So I'm through from BTO Scotland, British Trust for Ornithology. Our strap line there, you can see inspired by birds, informed by science. Basic idea is to get the public, get you guys involved in recording in various different ways. And then we use that information in a whole host of different ways to basically help folk understand the causes of population change in birds and what can be done to help them. And here's a wee slide from our most recent annual report, just encapsulating some of that. You don't need to read all the words. We're a membership-based organisation, about 18,000 members. Volunteers are just a huge part of our work. So we have a whole range of different schemes and surveys folk can get involved in. We also have a sort of team of semi-feral scientists who do bespoke research and who analyse all the numbers. We do a lot of public engagement stuff like this. We run training. So if you're keen to improve your bird ID, do sign up for the BTO Scotland e-newsletter on our website. And then we'll be running Zoom and face-to-face training courses over the course of the year, and youth engagement and all sorts of other good stuff that you can get your teeth into. And you might have spotted down at the bottom right here, we also have a YouTube channel with ID videos, which you might find useful. So that's BTO. In a nutshell, if you come across a number about birds, population change, or the number of eggs they lay, or how old they live, or any of those kind of things, how far they travel, chances are BTO have been involved in quite a significant way in generating that number, but typically via volunteers doing a huge amount of amazing work for us to provide the data. Okay, so on to nesting, the bulk of today's talk. And I want to talk to you principally about a really great scheme you can get involved in called Nesting Neighbours. This is monitoring nests in your garden or in your local area. And obviously, if you've got boxes up in the garden or in the neighbourhood, that's a really good place to start. And you might be lucky enough to have these guys nesting. They sound like this when they sing. A little bit like the start of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. These are blue tits, of course. And if you've got nesting boxes and you're able to lift the lid, you can look in and you can monitor what's going on. So that's the basic idea of Nesting Neighbours, simple monitoring of nests in your garden or local area. But people, the minute I say lift the lid and look inside, quite understandably, immediately think, oh, I wouldn't want to cause the birds to desert. I'd be nervous about that. And that's a really legitimate concern, particularly for those of us who are passionate about our wildlife. And I need to help you to get over that, okay? It is perfectly possible to monitor birds' nests up close through the cycle without causing the birds to desert. We do have, some recommended guidance, but it's really not as difficult as you might imagine. The birds have invested a lot in their breeding attempt, and it actually takes quite a bit to cause them to desert. So looking in the nest every 5 to 7 days and just making a note of what's in there won't cause them to desert. We get you to follow what we call best practice. Simple stuff though. And just each time you look in there, once you found the nest, each time you look in there, you're just recording the date, the species, obviously, and what's in there. So is it eggs, how many chicks, and that sort of thing. Simple stuff, easy to do, really, really rewarding. And that's something I really hope I can convey to you through this talk. Having got myself into this, having got the bug, just how rewarding this is. It gives you this kind of amazing, up close, intimate experience with birds that most people don't get to experience. Bird ringers, as we know, get to handle the birds and see them up close. For most of us, they're more distant at the bird feeder or through the binoculars. But through the Nesting Neighbours scheme, you can get right up close and see them, as I can demonstrate to you shortly. So yeah, really valuable info. I'll tell you a little bit about how the information is used, but great fun, principally great fun. So what's all this about then? Well, as I say, BTO run or coordinate a whole range of different schemes and surveys that tell us how birds are doing in different habitats and at different times of year and all sorts of things like that. But when we're trying to understand what's driving population change, or what's driving a population increase or decrease, there are two main components to that. You know this, don't you guys? Population change is driven by the birth rate on one hand and the death rate on the other hand, and it's the balance between those two. And what the nest monitoring does is it gives us a really good understanding of the birth rate, in essence, or the factors that affect birth rate and how that's changing. So in a scenario like this silly little schematic here, lots of eggs being laid, lots of chicks being born, and fewer birds dying. Of course, we know that from the bird ringing scheme that we also run. So this would help us to understand why a population might be increasing, the balance in favour of births over deaths, and where a population's decreasing, if we can see from the nest monitoring that the number of eggs being laid is down, or the breeding attempts are down, and the death rate is up, that can help us understand population decreases. So it's just, in simple terms, it's helping us understand what underpins demographic changes. If you really want to look at the numbers, let's not get too bogged down in these specific examples, but just to illustrate the kind of things our scientists can do, they can take long-term monitoring from the Common Bird Census and Breeding Bird Survey. And in the case here of linnet, see a long-term population decline. But this doesn't explain why the population's declined. And then we can take information from the nest monitoring on clutch size, okay, declining clutch size. Egg stage nest failure is gradually increased, and chick stage nest failure is gradually increased. So we're able to kind of understand some of the factors, at least, that are underpinning that kind of change, and tease apart the different times of year and the pinch points that are affecting the birds. Here's just another example of what we can learn from nest monitoring. In this case, this is green finch. And you're seeing here over the course of a 40-year or so period, the egg laying date has shifted. The first egg laying date is shifted forward by nearly a month in response to climate change. So just really powerful evidence of how some species, some resident species, can adapt to climate change. Clearly for some migratory species, it's more difficult. So really powerful information for our scientists to get their teeth into. From your point of view, it's as simple as finding a nest and then looking in it once every 5 to 7 days and seeing what's in there. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people feel a little bit kind of, well, where do I start? Clearly, if you've got nests in boxes, that's a nice, easy place to start. As long as you can look into them, that's a good place to start. But then you may decide that's all you want to do, and that's fine. But some people, having got the bug and enjoyed looking in boxes, start getting curious and thinking, oh, well, there's forever a blackbird singing from over there. I wonder where his nest is. Or, right, okay, there always seem to be dunnocks near that hedge. I wonder. So, curiosity is aroused. So how do we go about finding open nests? There are two main techniques for this, both of which can be honed and refined, and you'll have to excuse the language. One of them is called arsing, by the people who are aficionados of it, in the sense that you sit on your arse, and the other is called legging, where you spend a bit more time actively searching. And I'll just tell you a bit about how you can apply each of these strategies. So arsing is what it sounds, really. It's just sitting, in muted clothing at the right time of day and clearly at the right time of year, and just watching and listening, basically. And in fact, you can do that from your living room window. You might notice a blackbird carrying nesting material going into a yew hedge in your garden, for example, or the blue tits going in and out of the nest box. You are, in essence, arsing in your living room in that case. This obviously works best as a strategy when the birds are either building the nest or they're feeding chicks. But actually, with practice, you can do this even when the female is incubating, because she will take incubation breaks every now and again, be away from the nest, and she'll be calling to the male, and you can pick up on the female's call to the male. You can watch the female, and after a while, once she's fed and had a wee break, she'll disappear back down to the nest, and you can follow her back in. There we go. Tends to be most activities mornings and evenings, so those are the best times to be out. And for some species, it's really tricky. So for others, easy, some species really tricky. So robins, for example, are notoriously difficult to watch back. If they see you, they just won't visit the nest. They're very kind of furtive, so they'll be kind of like, dum-de-dum-de-dum, no nest around here. But with other species, yeah, really easy to follow back. So the reason there's a picture of a bit of scrub here and a gorse bush is this is part of my little local patch. And I was, in fact, walking through, not even properly arsing, and there were long-tailed tits, I noticed, carrying feathers and disappearing into this gorse and flying off again, and then they'd reappear and disappear in, and there was a lot of activity down in here. So I picked up on that behavior. I went in, and this is what I found, a partially built long-tailed tit's nest. And a few weeks later, actually, this is a different nest, but a few weeks later, it looked like this beautiful little dome-shaped nests made of all of these lovely bits of lichen and cobwebs and moss and so on. They expand, in fact, as the brood inside expands. Very clever. So that's your kind of arsing technique. It can be used as well for nests on the ground, although it's a bit more tricky. So once you've got an indication of where the ground nest is, you need to take care, obviously carefully part the vegetation, as this guy is here with sticks, so as to be careful not to tread on the nest. And you might, through this technique, find something like this. This is a beautiful willow warbler nest. Willow warblers nest on the ground, and they make these stunning dome-shaped nests. Let's have a listen to a willow warbler song. It's a lovely noise, isn't it? It reminds us of how far it is, how far until summer, though. We'll have to wait for them to be back again. With these guys, once they're incubating, the females do this kind of incubation break thing. So you can listen for the hee-weet call from the female, and she'll be flitting around, and then you can watch her back down to the ground and find your nest. And a few weeks later, in this case, some little chicks in there. And through this kind of approach, you do find nests in totally unexpected places. I think these guys were busily sitting watching, and I think a robin perhaps flew down into this little tree protector, and lo and behold, down in there was a hidden nest that you'd have never found by cold searching. You'd never have thought to look there. But that is the other main approach, essentially, cold searching. So looking in likely spots where you think birds are likely to nest, so hedges and that sort of thing. And that's the key, really, you know, where you've got areas of promising looking habitat that isn't too extensive, just go and have a wee look. So this is a sort of pyracantha bush, for example, near to my house, and looked good. I had a look in there, and lo and behold, there was an active dunnock's nest in there. And it might be that there's a hedge in your garden, for example, you can look at. And yeah, finding nests which are towards the edge, high up, often it's helpful to look up through the vegetation, and you can see the nest kind of silhouetted against the lighter sky. Once you get your eye in, basically it becomes easier and easier, because you find year on year the birds will often return to the same spot. So in the case of this prickly bush here that had the dunnock's nest in it, lo and behold, I went back the next year and there was another nest just a few inches from the last one. And you know, you just do begin to kind of get to know your patch and know where to look. And in fact, in winter, you can go and you can look in deciduous trees and hedges, and you can often see nests that you missed the previous year, and you think, aha, right, I know to check them more carefully next year. And these are some of the kind of gems that you can find with this kind of technique. I'll play these, and anybody who's quick off the mark can type into the chat what they think they are. So you might find something like this, which sounds like this. Nobody's been brave enough to so far to type in what they think that is. Go on, type in what you think it is, and I'll have a look and see. We've got one on the right here. Oh, well done, Claudia's got it. Mike, well done. This is another species that you might find in a hedge. Alarm call, of course. Whoops, why is my presentation doing that? What makes this noise? Brilliant, and you got it, Sarah, Claudia. Yeah, well done. So alarm calls, of course, from a blackbird, but the alarm calls can be a helpful clue, right? So if you're cold searching with this kind of technique and you're working away along a long hedge, perhaps, and you start getting alarm calls, you can think, aha, I might be onto something here. I need to look even more closely. And what about this one? What makes this beautiful nest with these beautiful blue eggs? Sounds like this. David's got it. Yeah, you're close, Anne, but well done. David's got it and Claudia's got it. That's a Dunnock song, a little hurried bubbling warble. Now, who'd have thought that a relatively drab bird, let's be honest, could have such a beautiful nest with such beautiful eggs? When you find one of these for the first time, it's like, you know, finding a little jewel or something like that. They really are spectacular, gorgeous little things. So these are the kind of things you can find just literally by being curious and looking in likely spots. Here's another song thrush nest. This one a wee bit paler. It looks almost like chipboard, doesn't it? With these beautiful eggs in. And having found the nest, what do? Well, obviously you note down some of the key things about the nest when you first found it. So where it is, the date, what's in it, and the species, if you can figure that out. And then you just revisit every 5 to 7 days. You don't want to be visiting too often and risking undue disturbance, nor do you want to be visiting too infrequently. So 5 to 7 days is about ideal. And just each time recording what's there. So 5 eggs, we've got some newly hatched chicks and another egg still. And then later still, how many chicks have we got here? I think 3, unless I'm missing one. And then you're hoping with your last visit, you can time it at or near fledging and kind of get confirmation that the pair were successful. But sometimes they aren't successful. That's part of the game, I'm afraid. You're also recording the failures for whatever reason as well. So you plan ahead just a wee bit. I tend to have this little notebook with me, and I just make a page for each nest, and then I can just sort of keep track. Yeah, I need to revisit in 5 days or so, and just be a little bit cautious near the fledging dates, because if the birds are nearly ready to go and you were to sort of blunder in carelessly, you might cause them to go early. But if you're keeping a wee note of how they're getting on, then you'll know. And just be aware, yeah, sometimes the outcome will be unknown. So you'll go back round about the time you expect them to fledge, but you won't be able to see the young birds anywhere. But equally, the nest doesn't look like it's been predated. It hasn't been kind of ripped up or whatever. So you're sort of thinking, well, I probably got off okay, but I'm not too sure. And that's okay. You know, even recording outcome unknown, we're going to get loads of information from that monitoring attempt. You know, the dates that the eggs were laid and that the chicks hatched and all of those kind of key things, brood size, still loads of information, even if we don't get the outcome. And we do have a whole load of great guidance as well. There's a kind of quick start guide. There's a brilliant book, which I've got a copy of somewhere, and I've put some on my DAF. Never mind. This amazing book here, Field Guide to Monitoring Nests, which I warmly recommend. You can get hold of a copy of this, which has got sort of species by species accounts of how to monitor them and where the nests are and what the eggs look like and all sorts of stuff like that. So we've got guidance to get going. Plus you can chat to me, you know, you can always drop me an email. I'll give you advice based on my experience. We've got a network of nest recording mentors in Scotland as well. So there might be one of those near you, and you can even go out with them and get some kind of tips to help you get started. So that's the gist of it. You individually can make a big difference in Scotland. Okay, so we have got some real passionate folk taking part in the Nest Record Scheme and Nesting Neighbours, but there's plenty of scope to do more. So if I just highlight a few species here, you know, mute swan, 10 nests were monitored before the pandemic in 2019, just a few mallard nests, just a few moorhen and coot. Long-tailed tit nest, which with practice are really easy to find, and then they tend to go back year on year to the same spot. Wood pigeon, if you're comfortable up a step ladder or a ladder, dead easy to have a look in wood pigeon nest, or even a kind of camera or an endoscope on the end of a pole. Wren nest, robin, hasper, you know, plenty of species to get your teeth into, just relatively common garden or local area species for which more information would be really, really, really valuable. So I thought, just by way of kind of giving you a sense of what it's like in practice, I just sort of take you on a little virtual tour of my patch, which is, you know, literally out of the window here, you know, literally from my little suburban street and just in the immediate area. So just where I first pointed the camera around the corner there is this lime tree with all of this kind of scruffy stuff that tends to grow at the bottom of lime trees. And that's always worth a look. You know, once a week I tend to walk around, sometimes with my son, and we take a little step ladder and we have a look, see various bits and bobs. And on one occasion I saw from underneath some kind of green fresh moss, which I thought, oh, that looks suspicious. So I clambered up on my little step ladder, peered down, and lo and behold, this is a dunnocks nest with one little perfect blue egg in. And the next time we visited, we were up to 3. So that's a kind of good place to look. Tiny bit further down this road, we get to this point. So this is Dunblane Cemetery. You can see here there's a slightly scruffy hedge and there's a bridge. So we always look in this hedge, can be good for thrush nests or blackbird nests. And also there's often a wood pigeon nest or 2 in there. So this is later in the year. I've clambered up and there's a big fat wood pigeon squab there in the nest. We've got a load of bird boxes up. I think we've got a dozen or so bird boxes that we put up just up alongside this little stream in the little kind of local park. So we check those each time. And we've been doing this since he was tiny. So this was him when he was 3 or 4 or something, my son Luke. He loved pink at the time, hence the pink hat. And look at his little face. Can you see, if you look really carefully, there's actually a female great tit sitting tight on the nest, right? And they often do this when they're incubating. You gently lift the lid and they just sit there. And when else would you get that intimate experience of looking kind of eye to eye with a wild bird up so close? You can see his little face. These memories will live for him forever, I hope. So in that case, you just note down, incubating female, you gently close the lid and you move on to your next box. Sometimes they will fly away, but usually they sit tight. And if they do fly away, you just note down what's in the box and then leave them be. And they don't desert, right? They have invested a lot of time and energy in getting to the nest at that stage. They're not just going to give up. As soon as you've gone, they'll come back, they'll check that everything's as it should be. And of course it is. And they'll just keep going, right? A bit like, imagine you got a start while you were out with your family, someone walked around a corner and made you jump. You're not going to run off and abandon your children and it just doesn't work like that. You've invested a lot, there's a lot of love, there's a bond, you might have got a bit of a start, but you pick yourself up and you carry on, and the birds do the same. We've got years and years and years of evidence to show that, checking boxes and checking nests in this way does not cause them to desert. So it's really okay to have that fear, but I want to reassure you this can be done safely. Here's another little box. Look at this little face. Super happy to have found, this is a blue tit nest, I think. Look at all those little eggs in there. Great big clutch that they've made. And then we come back later. And in this case, quite a few of the young had actually not survived. I think this is the same box, maybe not. You can see the newly hatched chicks there. Here's another area on the little walk we do, scruffy hedge on the outside of somebody's garden fence, where sort of honeysuckle and other bits and bobs have grown through. And we would always check that. And every now and again, you'll find a dunnocks, or in this case, a blackbird's nest in there. Sometimes, of course, these are predated. That's a natural part of the cycle for birds. And you're just recording that faithfully too. There's a few places where the bank's a bit overhung along the stream, so I wear wellies and I peer in under, and these are classic places for wren's nests, often tucked in underneath here, hidden away. You find those if you look. And this is my favorite bit. So this is the scruffy yew hedge I told you about, and we walked along here, and you can get in under this bridge with wellies on, of course. And I'd actually piled up these rocks and boulders here. I had a trail camera mounted on a bracket on the wall in order to record, to see whether or not otters were coming up through the little stream in Dunblane. And sure enough, they do very regularly, but that's another story. So there's spraint on all of these boulders. But this bracket was here, unused. I'd stopped putting the trail camera out, and I found this pipe that some builders or someone had just dropped and had ended up in the stream. So I thought, oh, well, I'll see. I'll stuck it up on the bracket, stuffed a bit of moss in there to sort of see if any birds would get the right idea. And just a few weeks later, I kid you not, I came through and there was this. This is a perfect dipper's nest with moss, with grass, lined with these dry leaves, and then these 5 beautiful white eggs. And a few weeks later, dipper chicks, and they went on to breed successfully. And can you imagine my excitement at having put this scruffy bit of pipe up on the wall, and the dippers had almost instantly taken to it. And a really nice, easy nest to monitor. You could walk right up and it was at eye level. So really, really fun, really rewarding things to do. And this is my son here, Luke. These are a lot of his school friends. I built them a kind of camp and swings and clambering things along the stream. And they all got really, really keen on this dipper's nest. So when I checked it, they would come in this great little army of children, all wanting to see how the dippers were getting on, and being really excited to see the babies and stuff. So you might think, well, that's not really fair on the dippers. We would go, we would do it quickly, we would leave them in peace. They fledged successfully, no problem at all. And I like to think that I've kindled an interest in the minds of these children, and that they'll look with sympathy on dippers when they see them in future. It's part of the reward for me. So a few things to suggest you might like to get started with. Whole nesting boxes like blue tits and great tits and so on. Things that live in hedges like dunnock, song thrush, blackbird. And if you're comfortable up a step ladder, you're bound to have wood pigeon nests near you. Data from all these species would be valuable. Maybe a bit further afield, things like swans, coots, moorhens, super easy to find the nests and monitor them. And as you saw, we hardly have any data coming in, so we really appreciate that. And then you can sit by a little nearby river or stream, enjoy the waterway, enjoy the noises and the sights and the sounds, and just watch the grey wagtails and the dippers, and they'll tell you where their nests are. You'll soon see them flying in and out of a particular area on the bank, and you'll get a sense of where to go and monitor those nests. Another nice, rewarding, straightforward ones. Right, before I go, I want to give you a whistle-stop tour of another scheme that I want to encourage you to get involved in. I appreciate we're a bit tight on time, so I'll do this really, really quickly. This is BTO's weekly garden birdwatch scheme, which you may have heard about. So the RSPB run a kind of one day, once a year, big garden birdwatch. We run a year-round scheme. It's free to take part in. All of our surveys are free to take part in these days. And you're just simply monitoring what's visiting your garden. It's really powerful information. So simple recording, a community of people simply recording what visits their gardens. You can keep just a checklist of the species that are visited, or if you prefer, you can keep a kind of maximum count, so the maximum number you saw at any one time. You do that over the course of each week, year round, and you're keeping a kind of long-term journal of what's visiting your garden. I suspect many of you do this anyway. You're contributing to this big scheme with thousands of people taking part in. It provides really valuable information. So you just record at the windowsill, every now and again, stick the information in on a dead straightforward website. So we get an idea of the annual or the seasonal patterns of use. I think this is robin, so more common in gardens in winter and less in summer, for example. And each species has this kind of heartbeat type pulse, and we can look at change over the long term. In the case of this species, that's house sparrow chirping away, a couple of female house sparrows. So you're seeing that the garden birdwatch scheme picked up on the long-term decline of house sparrows in the UK. Interestingly, in Scotland, they're actually doing a wee bit better. Other species, the scheme has shown have increased hugely in gardens, like these guys. Those are twittering calls from goldfinches, you may know. So they've increased in population, but also increased in their tendency to visit gardens. And in fact, that's true of many species. So we have an increasing diversity of species visiting the average garden now, which this scheme has helped us to demonstrate. Some species, unfortunately, not doing so well. So these guys, for example, you can see have declined a lot. So there's a green finch suffering, unfortunately, from a disease called trichomoniasis. And these guys are giving us a bit of a cause for concern too. Look, another declining graph. You might know that one, that's singing male chaffinch. So we're starting to see some warning signs with chaffinch too. So your garden monitoring can help us to determine how they're doing and whether anything needs to be done to help them. And there's all sorts of other things you can do if you want to, optional things. So if you want, you can record garden mammals and butterflies, reptiles, not that there are going to be too many grass snakes recorded in Scotland, amphibians and that sort of thing. So really, really rewarding, involve the family, just kind of take a renewed interest in what visits your garden and contribute to this scheme. You can start at any time, you can do so year round. So if you visit the BTO website, British Terrestrial Ornithology website, you'll be able to find out about the Nesting Neighbours nest recording, which of course is more of a spring thing, and you can get your teeth right now into the garden birdwatch scheme, dead straightforward and a way of contributing to this bigger picture of understanding. Brilliant. That was me roughly on time. Thanks very much indeed for listening and happy to take any questions. Thanks very much.